friends, I'm Jessica, and as you just saw, I just made Rain wait a really long time for that treat. Have you ever had to wait for something for a really long time? Maybe it was for a new season of your favorite show on Netflix to come out, or you waited to get somewhere for hours on a really long road trip. You know what you're waiting for is worth the wait, but actually waiting for it to happen can be the worst. And if you're anything like me, you find yourself asking over and over, are we there yet? Now, for years, I wanted to travel to Ethiopia to serve at an organization that I really love a lot. And I waited so long to finally go there, but the longest part was the flight to get there. Now, I don't know if you've ever been on a super long flight, but it can sometimes feel like time stands still. And on the plane in front of you, they have this screen that shows you like a map of where you're flying over as you fly over the whole world. And so on my screen in front of me for 13 hours, I watched. Sometimes it felt like the little plane felt like it was standing still, like time was not even moving. Isn't it funny how long we'll wait for something that we think is worth it? But no matter what we're waiting on, the waiting part usually isn't very much fun. Forgiveness can feel the same way. When forgiveness doesn't happen immediately, it can be difficult to be patient through the whole process. When we talk about this whole idea of forgiveness, we're talking about letting go of negative feelings we have towards someone who has hurt, harmed, or disappointed us, regardless of if they actually deserve or want our forgiveness. And while that sounds pretty good, in reality, it isn't always easy. Because forgiveness takes more than a moment. It often requires us to wait. Things don't always get better right away simply because someone apologized. Hurts don't stop hurting just because you've asked for forgiveness. And a lot of times, forgiveness takes longer than we like. Maybe you've been hurt by someone in your life, like a family member or a friend or a sibling or a teammate, and maybe that person even came to you, apologized, and asked for your forgiveness. Maybe you accepted that apology and told them you were ready to forgive and move on. That all sounds great, but any of us who have been in that position before knows that it's not always that simple, because sometimes you forgive and nothing changes. Maybe your feelings don't change. You still feel the hurt or pain or sadness over what happened, and forgiveness just hasn't made that go away. You might even still be angry toward the person that hurt you. Or maybe the other person doesn't change. Maybe you forgave someone for what they did that caused you hurt or pain. You were hopeful that they never do it again, but then they did. And now it seems like your forgiveness didn't change anything at all. Maybe the situation doesn't change at all. Sure, you forgave someone, but that doesn't change the fact that what's done is done. Forgiveness doesn't change the way things are or make things between you and the other person you forgave any better. Or maybe the situation is reversed. Maybe you are the one who had to ask for forgiveness for something. And even though you've received that forgiveness, you still feel bad. Things still don't change. The relationship, the circumstances, the feelings just can't go back to the way they were overnight. That all probably leaves us asking the question, why should we forgive someone or even ourselves if things don't change? Does it even matter if it doesn't work the way we want it to? Is forgiveness really worth the wait? The good news is that people have been asking questions about this whole idea of forgiveness for a long time. And I think that's because it's a really important thing in our lives. How do I know? Well, because Jesus himself actually talked about it when he was on earth. During that time, Jesus spent a lot of time with 12 close friends and followers. We know these guys as his disciples. And while he was with them, Jesus went out of his way to teach his disciples how to live a life that reflected their relationship with him. One day, one of these disciples asked Jesus a question about forgiveness. Let's take a look. Then Peter came to him and asked, "Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times?" Okay, 7 times seems like a lot of times to forgive someone, right? Hang on, I wanna show you something. Okay, well, when Jesus was living, typically people operated on a 3-strike forgiveness policy. You know, 3 strikes and you're out. That meant they usually only offered forgiveness 3 times. So when Peter said to Jesus that he thought they should forgive 7 times, he basically was going above and beyond. Peter probably thought 7 times? This is really gonna impress Jesus. But knowing Jesus changes everything for us and for the disciples back then. So of course, Jesus responded with an answer that totally changed the way Peter thought about forgiveness. Let's take a look. No, not 7 times, Jesus replied, but 70 times 7. Jesus gave his disciples a number so big that they knew it meant they had to forgive over and over and over again. And the same applies to us. Jesus asks us to forgive others 70 times 7 times. That's 490 times. That is a ton of forgiveness. And yes, this is actually 490 pieces of candy right here. But that's how forgiveness is meant to work. We're supposed to forgive as many times as it takes for it to stick. Because forgiveness takes more than a moment, we have to keep forgiving until the forgiveness actually changes something inside of us. Now, I don't think that Jesus was giving us some magic number here. Instead, I think Jesus was trying to help us understand that forgiveness takes more than a moment. We have to forgive and then keep forgiving until our hearts change toward the person who has caused us pain. That means forgiving until we can choose not to let our anger toward the other person control us. Until we can choose to speak kind words about them when we're around them and when we're not. Until we can choose not to spill the tea to our friends about what they did to us. Until we can choose not to get back at them for what they did. Until we can choose to move on, even if they never apologize to us. The truth is that forgiveness helps us move on. But that doesn't always happen right away. Sometimes moving on and letting go takes time. And that's what Jesus was trying to encourage us to remember here. Think of it kind of like an injury. Some injuries are just little minor cuts and scrapes that heal almost the very next day. But some injuries are more serious. They require more time and care to heal. Look at this broken arm, for example. That injury isn't just going to heal on its own. It's going to take rest, a cast, long-term treatment, and possibly even surgery to fix it. And once the arm is completely healed, it will never be exactly the same as it was before the injury. There might be scars or even permanent pins and screws. But while the arm might not be exactly the same after it's healed, the person will be able to use their arm again. And the same is true with forgiveness. The healing can take longer when the injury is worse. Just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that you'll be exactly the same after you've healed. The relationship might change, the rules might change, the way you feel might even change. But healing is still possible if you practice what Jesus said, if you choose to forgive over and over and over again. See, forgiveness takes time. And through forgiveness, you can experience healing that I promise you will be worth the wait. So what do we do with all this? Since forgiveness takes time, how do we keep going? How can we continue to forgive even when it feels like nothing changes right away? Well, there's a few things I want you to remember about forgiveness as you give this a try. First, it takes practice. Just like anything worthwhile, forgiveness takes practice. You didn't master those cool longboarding tricks overnight. You didn't become the best gymnast just after one meet. You had to show up and then keep showing up. You had to keep going even when it felt like it wasn't working as quickly as you wanted it to. Forgiveness is an invitation to practice choosing to move on from the pain that someone or something has caused you, whether they deserve that forgiveness or not. And that can be so hard. I know it's hard for me. And it takes practice. So keep at it. Practice forgiving the little things. And then, for the things that may feel bigger, practice forgiving over and over and over again. Because the more you do it, the easier it will become. Then ask for help. Forgiveness isn't easy and is not supposed to work right away. It's a healing process, and healing takes time. It doesn't happen the moment you forgive. So don't give up when it doesn't feel like it's working. Pray that God will help you remember the words of Jesus, to forgive over and over and over again. And then ask for help as you keep doing that. Go to God for help, or talk to your small group leader for encouragement, or find a friend to help you as you move on. Next, it's okay if things change. Remember, forgiveness doesn't promise that everything will get fixed right away. And I want you to know today that sometimes part of forgiveness means the relationship changes. Things don't always go back to the way they were. And sometimes they shouldn't go back to the way they were. You might forgive and still decide to break up. You might forgive and still need some space from that friendship. And a lot of times, those are actually good things and will make your life better. As you think about what that might look like in your life, remember that it's okay if the relationship changes. And finally, remember it's about you. When someone wrongs you, they're not always going to ask for forgiveness. And that definitely makes forgiving harder to do. But in these moments, remember that forgiveness isn't just about them. It's also about you. Forgiveness will make your life better in the long run. It will help you heal from the hurt you've experienced. It will help you move forward and move on from the negative emotions and bad situations in your life. So whether the other person changes or not, choose to forgive for yourself. And here's something really important that I want you to know. Forgiveness doesn't mean that those who hurt you shouldn't experience consequences for what they've done to you, especially if they've abused you in any kind of way. And if that's you, I am so sorry that you've been hurt in that way. What happened to you is absolutely not your fault. And the best step you can take toward moving forward is to tell someone about it. I want to encourage you to tell your small group leader or another adult that you trust, because they want to help you get the support you need. We've spent the last 3 weeks talking about this whole forgiveness thing because it's something that we all have to deal with for the rest of our lives. We'll all find ourselves needing to forgive someone else. And we'll also be in situations where we need to forgive ourselves. The truth is, it's not always going to be easy, which is why it's important to have people we trust who we can talk to about it. And that's exactly why we have groups. Your group is a great place to keep the conversation about forgiveness going. It's a place where you can talk about the process of forgiveness as you experience it. So I hope you'll start sharing with your group today about how you're feeling about forgiveness. So remember, when you don't forgive, it hurts you. Everyone needs forgiveness, and forgiveness takes time. And even if it requires a lot of time, I promise that it will be worth every second as it changes you and helps you move on. Okay, Rain has been waiting long enough. Let me go get her.